guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video. It is going to be a Pan Those Eyeshadows update. Last update, I made some tweaking to my project to try and like rotate in newer palettes to my collection, and we're gonna tweak back to kind of just like the original way that I was doing my Pan Those Eyeshadows, because I feel like I just needed like a 1 month refresh break. I hit 4 bonus pans this past month. I didn't hit pan on any of the actual pans I was working on, but I'm still feeling like refreshed from the rut I was in. So we'll get into more of that after this introduction. But if you guys are interested in seeing my progress on the palettes that I was working on, the eyeshadow pans that I was working on, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content, or you just like to chit chat about makeup, I would love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's just jump into this update. Okay, you guys, last update, I randomly generated shades from 3 new eyeshadow palettes to my collection that I had personally selected. Like, I chose the palette, randomly generated the shade. I'm not going to do that anymore. I am going to try and bring less eyeshadow palettes into my collection, but I'm choosing not to do that anymore. So this update, we will randomly generate, I'm going to work on 5 eyeshadows at a time. So we'll randomly generate 2 more eyeshadows at the end of this, but I'm going to quickly show you the palettes that I had selected for myself that were new to my collection that I randomly generated shades from. So up first, we have the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette. I do have this palette on my eyes today, and I had a ton of fun playing with this. All of the like new to me palettes I used 3 times total. I just reached for the palette 3 times total. I was working on this shade right here. It's the shade that was randomly generated, and I reached for that shade 3 times. This is a beautiful palette. Like, I'm in love with this palette. I think it is just so stunning and so unique to my collection, at least. And then I also selected the BH Cosmetics 90s Remix palette, and I randomly generated this bright green shade. I did reach into this palette a total of 3 times as well, and I had a lot of fun with this. I think that this is amazing quality, especially the shimmers. They are like poppin', and I am really excited to continue to reach for this palette as well. And then the third new to me palette, which is actually a palette I've had in my collection for a while but just hadn't gotten around to testing, is my Glamlite Ice Cream palette. And I randomly generated the shade Raspberry, which I reached for 1 time, but I reached for this palette in total 3 times. I will say I am really impressed with the few shades that I reached for in this as well. Super pigmented, really good quality, and I'm really excited to continue to play around with this as well. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that so you didn't feel like left in the dark, even though I am deciding not to do that anymore. That being said, let's get into the 4 bonus pans I hit this month. So up first, I have one from ColourPop that I was working on in a different project. I did hit pan on Glass Bowl. I'm hoping you'll be able to see that pan. So I was really excited to finally hit pan on that shade, hit pan on a single. That always feels good. And then I was working on a cream shade. I always am working on a cream shade out of my Tarte Love Trust and Fairy Dust palette, and I did hit pan on the cream shade. So I now have 2 pans in this palette, and I was really excited. I lost this palette for a little bit, and then I found it, and I've been having a lot of fun with this palette as well. I also hit pan on a shade out of my Melt Mary Jane palette. I usually am working on an eyebrow powder shade as well, so I did hit pan. Hopefully you'll be able to see. There we go. On the shade Sinsimilia. I have no idea how to pronounce that. But I hit pan on that shade. And then the 4th and final bonus pan is out of my Natasha Denona Mini Nude. I've been reaching for this palette so much. I had hit pan on this shade last month, and then I hit pan on this matte shade, so I'm super excited about that. This is a palette that I just continue to reach for. It's such a staple palette in my collection, and I'm really happy that it is showing the love that it gets. So then we will jump into the 3 eyeshadow pans that I was working on in this project that I will be continuing to work on, because I did not hit pan on any of these. Up first, from the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette, I am working on the shade Meditate. It looks really messy, I'm sure. I do like to reach into this shade with my finger, and I reached for this shade a total of 6 times. So I have a rule in my project. I'm allowing myself 3 vetoes throughout the year. I've already used 2 of them. And then also, I either have to hit pan on a shade to roll it out, or I have to use it 15 times. So I'm at 6 total uses for this. I'm gonna swatch this on my hand so we can kind of get the color story. There's a decent dip going in this, but I have no idea how deep the actual pans are. I do think this is a beautiful shade. I do really enjoy this palette. I think some shades are really hit and miss. That is what this looks like. And you can really manipulate the shade to kind of match whatever eye look you're going with. The other day I wore this and it looked super purple, but I've also worn this and it looks really bronzy. So I've been enjoying that. Next up we have my Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I was so excited to roll this in because this is, I would consider this to be one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection, but it's one of those palettes that I know I love and for some reason stop myself from using. It's like one of those weird things that I do. But I randomly generated the shade Ultraviolet, which is this really beautiful purple shade. One of the reasons I was excited to purchase this palette. But this is a very purple shade, obviously. It's called Ultraviolet, so it's not something I'm reaching for on a day-to-day basis, like to create work appropriate looks, although I do feel like I could really sheer that out and do something fun with that. I might have to try that. I did reach for this shade 6 times as well. I will say I had a lot of fun reaching into this palette for this shade Gold Glitch too. I just wanted to give that shade a shout out. But I mean, there you can see like there's disturbance in this, maybe a slight dip, but I feel like we still have a ways to go on this, and I feel like this one could be in the project for a little bit longer. And then for my Artemis palette, I had randomly generated the shade Captivate, which is this shade right here. And this is a very interesting formula in that it's almost like a chunky matte shade. Not my absolute favorite, but it actually blends out really easily. The more I used it, the more I really came to appreciate the formula and the shade. And it almost has more of a satin finish to it rather than like a true matte. Here it is swatched right here. I did reach for this shade a total of 5 times, so still 10 more uses or pan to go. I just swatched over this, but it did have like an even bigger dip going, but because of the formula, when you swatch it, it kind of smooths it all out. No idea how deep these pans are at all either, so it'll be really interesting to see when we get closer to that like 15 use mark how we are looking. But that is my update on these 3 shades. These are obviously all 3 going to be staying in, but because I'm kind of switching back to the way that I used to do this project, I'm going to randomly generate 2 more shades to work on alongside this color story. So let me grab my phone. Okay, so I currently have 1,262 eligible shades. I just do not want to work on a black or a cream shade just because I feel like a cream shade I just kind of like cycle through my collection, and then a black just honestly would not be fun to pan. So we are going to randomly generate 2 numbers, and we get number 616 and 311. So I'm going to jump into my spreadsheet. Number 616 comes from the Natasha Denona Mini Retro palette, and it is the 2nd shade in the palette. I'm curious to see, I'm curious to see, I love my Natasha Denona minis, and that is a palette I really enjoy, but I have not reached for much this year, so I'm actually really excited about that. And then number 311 comes from... 311 comes from my Huda Medium 2 palette, which I have not reached for that palette at all this year. And I was thinking to myself, I really need to. And number 311 is the 5th shade in that palette. So I think I worked on Nude Medium last year. I'm gonna go grab those 2 palettes and I will be right back. All right guys, I'm back and I didn't cheat and I didn't look. So we're gonna look together for the first time. So up first we have the Natasha Denona Mini Retro, the 2nd shade, which is gonna be this one right here. Oh, so this is the Natasha Denona Shadows, even in the mini, historically very deep, so I'm a little bit nervous because this is more of like a greenish silver, pending what you pair with. It's definitely looking more like a gray silver here. There we go. Very beautiful, but also, oh, now it kind of looks like a blue jean silver. Not a shade I reach for all that often, but dang, that looks so pretty. I'm like thinking through how I'm going to make this work. But anyway, and then we have the Huda Beauty Nude Medium, and we have the 5th shade, which, okay, so we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have another shimmery shade. This one looks beautiful. I will say the Huda palettes, historically pretty shallow pans, so I feel like, ooh, That is super pretty. Perfect for this time of year too. That is gorgeous. Okay, I am digging this. That is absolutely beautiful. This is what my color story looks like. I'll post a picture of my color story right here, like an actual picture of it. Yeah, yay. I'm actually really excited. I am hoping, I feel like with, I don't want to get like overcommitted, but I feel like with a little bit of effort, maybe I could roll this out next update. And then I actually am hopeful that I could potentially hit pan on Meditate. Again, it's very interesting because I'm using my fingers, so I don't necessarily know what pan is going to feel like or look like, but I am hopeful I could hit pan on Meditate come the next update. But yeah, that is really going to wrap it up for today's video. I would love to know, have you guys recently hit pan on any eyeshadows? Are you focusing on a specific palette? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.